The wedding invitation felt like a death sentence in Delilah Everhart's trembling hands, and she knew if she didn't find a way out in the next 48 hours, her family would sell her off to the highest bidder like cattle at auction. She stood in the center of the opulent hotel ballroom, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and the murmur of wealthy vampires and humans mingling at the annual Covenant Summit, her heart hammering against her ribs. The summit was supposed to be neutral ground, where the ancient vampire courts met with human representatives to maintain the fragile peace that had existed for the past century. Delilah had begged her older brother Marcus to bring her as his assistant, lying through her teeth about wanting to understand the family business. The truth was far more desperate. Her family had arranged her marriage to Gerald Morrison, a human businessman 3 times her age with wandering hands and a reputation for cruelty toward his staff. The Everharts weren't wealthy enough to refuse his offer, not with their debts mounting and their social standing crumbling. Her mother had smiled with tight lips when she delivered the news, as if Delilah should be grateful someone wanted her at all. She was 23 years old, and her life was being decided by people who saw her as nothing more than a bargaining chip. The ballroom doors opened, and a hush fell over the crowd like a physical wave. Delilah turned with everyone else, her breath catching in her throat at the sight of the newcomers. 3 vampires entered, but only one commanded every eye in the room. He stood at least 6'4", with skin so pale it seemed to glow under the chandelier light, almost translucent in its perfection. His hair fell past his shoulders in waves of pure white, contrasting sharply with the immaculate black suit that hugged his powerful frame. His features were aristocratic and sharp, all high cheekbones and a strong jaw, but it was his eyes that made Delilah's pulse skip. They were crimson, like blood lit from within, and they swept the room with the bored disdain of someone who had seen centuries pass and found them all wanting. "That's him," someone whispered nearby. "Bastian Sangrave, the vampire king himself." Delilah had heard the name, of course. Everyone had. Bastian Sangrave ruled the vampire world with an iron fist, maintaining order among the various vampire houses and enforcing the ancient laws that kept their kind hidden from most of humanity. He rarely attended these summits, sending representatives instead. His presence here meant something significant was happening, though Delilah couldn't imagine what. She watched as he moved through the crowd, other vampires and humans alike parting before him like the sea. His 2 companions, also white-haired and pale but less intimidating, flanked him with military precision. Everything about Bastian Sangrave screamed power, danger, and absolute authority. An insane idea bloomed in Delilah's mind. She had 48 hours. She needed a way out that her family couldn't refuse or override, and she needed it to be dramatic enough that Gerald Morrison would withdraw his offer out of sheer self-preservation. What if she was already married? Not really married, of course, just married enough to make her untouchable. Her family wouldn't dare push the issue if they believed she'd bound herself to someone powerful, someone they couldn't bully or bribe. And who was more powerful than the vampire king himself? It was absolutely insane. It would never work. He would probably have her thrown out or worse. But as Delilah watched her brother Marcus laughing with Gerald Morrison across the room, watched the old man's eyes find her and track her body with undisguised hunger, she knew she had to try. Before she could talk herself out of it, Delilah began walking toward Bastian Sangrave. The crowd seemed to sense her intention and drew back further, creating a clear path between her and the vampire king. She felt hundreds of eyes on her, felt her cheeks burning, but she kept moving, one foot in front of the other. Her simple blue dress felt suddenly inadequate among all the designer gowns and tailored suits. Her dark hair probably falling out of its hasty updo, but she couldn't stop now. Bastian had been speaking with one of the human representatives, his expression politely bored when Delilah reached him. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that his security detail tensed, far enough that she hoped she wouldn't be immediately removed. "Excuse me," she said, her voice somehow steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Those crimson eyes turned to her, and Delilah felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Up close, he was even more devastating. His beauty almost painful to look at, but there was nothing soft in his gaze, nothing welcoming. He looked at her the way a lion might regard a mouse that had scurried too close to its paws. "Do you?" he said, his voice deep and rich with an accent she couldn't place, something old and refined. "And you are?" "No one," Delilah said quickly. "I mean, no one important. But I need your help, and I know how that sounds. But please, just give me 2 minutes. I'm begging you." One of his companions, a male vampire with similar white hair but golden eyes, stepped forward. You dare approach the king with demands? Remove yourself before... Bastian raised one hand, and the other vampire fell silent immediately. The vampire king studied Delilah with an intensity that made her want to squirm, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. You're frightened, he observed. Your heart is racing, but not, I think, of me. At least not primarily. His head tilted slightly. What are you running from, little human? The endearment should have been condescending, but something in his tone made it sound almost curious instead. Delilah glanced around at the crowd watching them, saw her brother starting to push through toward her with alarm written across his face. Can we speak privately? She asked desperately. Please, I'll explain everything. I just need... Miss Everhart! Marcus's voice cut through the ballroom sharp with panic. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. My sister has had too much champagne. She doesn't know what she's saying. Bastian's eyes never left Delilah's face. Your sister seems perfectly lucid to me. He considered for a moment, then nodded once. Very well. 2 minutes. He turned and walked toward a side door, clearly expecting her to follow. Delilah didn't hesitate, hurrying after him despite Marcus's protests and the shocked whispers that erupted in their wake. The 2 vampire guards followed as well, closing the door behind them and leaving the 4 of them in a smaller, quieter sitting room. Bastian moved to stand near the fireplace, his posture relaxed but his attention sharp. Speak. Now that she had his attention, Delilah found the words tumbling out in a rush. My family arranged a marriage for me, to a terrible man, someone cruel and old, and I don't want it, but they won't listen. They need his money and they don't care what happens to me. The wedding is in 2 days and I've tried everything, but they won't budge. She took a shaking breath. So I need you to pretend to be my husband. Silence fell like a hammer. The male vampire with golden eyes looked like he might actually laugh. The other guard, a female with silver eyes, simply stared at Delilah as if she'd sprouted a second head. Bastian remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. You want me, he said slowly, to pretend to be your husband? Yes. Delilah forced herself to keep talking, to explain before he had her removed. Just for tonight. Just enough that word spreads, that people see us together, that my family believes I'm already bound to someone they can't refuse. You're the vampire king. No one would dare question it. No one would dare demand I marry someone else if they thought I belonged to you. Belonged to me, Bastian repeated, something dangerous flickering in those crimson eyes. I don't mean literally, Delilah said quickly. I mean not really, just publicly, just enough to give me protection. I know it's insane. I know I have nothing to offer you, but I'm desperate, and you're the only person in this entire building powerful enough that my family couldn't override it. Bastian moved then, crossing the room with inhuman grace until he stood directly in front of her. Delilah had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. This close, she could see the fine details of his face, the way his white hair caught the light, the absolutely inhuman beauty of him. He smelled like winter nights and old libraries, something cold and timeless. You ask me to involve myself in human politics, he said softly, to potentially create a diplomatic incident, to lie, publicly, about something as serious as a bonding. Do you understand what you're asking? I understand it's too much, Delilah whispered, but I have nowhere else to turn. And I thought maybe you'd understand what it's like to have your life controlled by other people's choices. Something shifted in his expression, too quick to read. Did you? You're a king, Delilah continued, the words spilling out desperately. You have duties, responsibilities, probably arranged alliances of your own. Maybe you know what it's like to have no choice. Or maybe I'm completely wrong, and you've always had all the power in the world, but I had to try. I had to at least ask. Bastian stared at her for a long moment, then unexpectedly he smiled. It was a small thing, barely a curve of his lips, but it transformed his entire face. You have courage, little human. Foolish, reckless courage, but courage nonetheless. Is that a yes? Delilah asked hopefully. It's a perhaps. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe again. Tell me more about this family of yours, and this man they would have you marry. Relief flooded through Delilah so intensely she nearly swayed. She told him everything, the words pouring out. about the Everhart family's declining fortunes, about Marcus and her mother's growing desperation, about Gerald Morrison's reputation and the way he looked at her when they had been introduced, about feeling trapped and helpless and terrified of a future that felt like a cage. Bastian listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he glanced at his two companions. "Thoughts?" he asked them. The male vampire shrugged. "It's unconventional, but not technically illegal, and it might be amusing to shake things up a bit. These summits are always so dreadfully boring." The female vampire looked less convinced. "It could set a complicated precedent. Other humans might seek similar protection." "Let them," Bastian said mildly. "If they're brave enough to approach me directly and ask." His gaze returned to Delilah. "I'll agree to your request, Miss Everhart, with conditions." "Anything," Delilah said immediately. "First, this arrangement lasts precisely as long as I deem it useful. You don't end it, I do. When I decide the performance has served its purpose, it ends, and you accept that without argument." His tone left no room for negotiation. "Second, you follow my lead in all things while we're in public. I won't have you contradicting me or making me look foolish. Third, you tell me the truth always. I can hear your heartbeat, little human. I'll know if you lie." "I understand," Delilah said. "I agree to all of it." "Fourth," Bastian continued, his voice dropping lower, "you understand that once we walk back through that door with this fiction in place, there will be consequences. Your family will react. This Gerald Morrison will react, perhaps violently. I will protect you from immediate harm, but I cannot shield you from every uncomfortable conversation or confrontation. You must be prepared for that." Delilah thought of Gerald's hands on her waist at their introduction dinner, the way her mother had looked away. She thought of a lifetime of such moments, of slow suffocation and death by degrees. "I'm ready," she said firmly. Bastian studied her face, then nodded once. "Very well. Then we begin now." He held out his hand, palm up, waiting. Delilah placed her hand in his, gasping slightly at the coolness of his skin. His fingers closed around hers, gentle but utterly secure. "Stay close to me," he instructed. "Look at me as though you've made the most important decision of your life, because you have. And trust that I know what I'm doing." Then he led her back toward the ballroom doors. The moment they entered, walking side by side with Delilah's hand in his, the room went silent again. But this time, the quality of the silence was different, shocked, scandalized. Bastian didn't pause, didn't acknowledge the stares. He simply walked with Delilah through the center of the room, heading straight for where Marcus stood with Gerald Morrison and several other Everhart family members. Marcus's face had gone pale. "Delilah, what are you—" "Miss Everhart has informed me of an arranged marriage," Bastian said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the silent ballroom. "One she entered into before understanding her existing obligations." Gerald Morrison frowned, his jowls quivering. "Existing obligations? What nonsense is this?" Bastian's smile was all teeth. "Delilah Everhart is bound to me. She has been for some time, though we kept the matter private until now. I'm sure you understand. It would not do for the Vampire King's bride to be offered to another man. The insult to my house would be considerable." The words landed like bombs. Marcus made a choking sound. Gerald's face turned an alarming shade of red. Delilah's mother, standing nearby, actually swayed and had to be caught by her husband. "That's impossible," Marcus sputtered. "She never mentioned anything about—" "Are you calling your sister a liar?" Bastian's tone went cold. "Or perhaps you're suggesting she requires your permission to make her own choices." "I'm saying this is highly irregular," Marcus tried, though his voice had lost its certainty. "We had an agreement with Mr. Morrison. Then you made an agreement concerning a woman who was not free to be offered." Bastian interrupted smoothly. "An unfortunate misunderstanding, I'm sure, but one that ends tonight." Gerald Morrison pushed forward, his face mottled with anger. "Now see here, I paid good money." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Bastian didn't move, didn't change expression, but suddenly the air felt heavy with threat. "You paid?" Bastian's voice was soft, deadly. "You purchased a woman? How fascinating. I was under the impression that slavery was illegal in this country. Perhaps I should alert the authorities." "That's not what I meant." Gerald backtracked quickly, but the damage was done. Several people nearby had already pulled out their phones, recording or typing furiously. Bastian turned to Delilah, his expression softening in a way that looked almost genuine. I apologize, beloved. I should have made our arrangement public sooner. This could have been avoided. Delilah stared at him, momentarily stunned by the endearment and the gentle tone. Then she remembered her role and nodded. It's all right. I understand why you wanted privacy. Nevertheless, Bastian raised their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. The gesture was old-fashioned, courtly, and absolutely devastating. Delilah felt heat flood her cheeks, her pulse jumping. No more secrecy. Let everyone know that you are mine and I am yours. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Camera phones flashed. Delilah saw her mother sink into a chair, fanning herself, while Marcus looked like he wanted to either argue or flee. Gerald Morrison stood frozen, clearly calculating whether challenging the Vampire King was worth the risk. He apparently decided it wasn't. With a muttered curse, he turned and stormed toward the exit. Bastian watched him go with satisfaction, then turned his attention to Marcus. I trust this matter is settled. Marcus looked at Delilah, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion and something that might have been concern. Delilah, is this what you really want? It was the first time anyone in her family had asked her that question. Delilah squeezed Bastian's hand and lifted her chin. Yes, she said clearly, it is. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then I suppose congratulations are in order. He didn't sound happy about it, but he also didn't argue further. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Bastian kept Delilah at his side, his hand either holding hers or resting at the small of her back, a constant reminder of his presence. People approached cautiously to offer congratulations or simply to get a better look at the human woman who had apparently captured the Vampire King's interest. Bastian fielded their questions with smooth deflection, revealing nothing real but maintaining the illusion perfectly. Delilah played her part as best she could, trying not to look as terrified and overwhelmed as she felt. Several times she caught herself actually leaning into Bastian's touch, seeking the comfort of his solid presence. He was dangerous. She knew that, probably one of the most dangerous beings in the entire world. But right now, he was also her shield, her protection, and she couldn't help but be grateful. Finally, as the summit events wound down for the evening, Bastian guided her toward the elevators. His two guards followed at a discreet distance. We need to discuss practical matters, he said once they were away from the crowds. Where are you staying? I was supposed to share a suite with my mother and brother, Delilah admitted, but I'm guessing that's not a good idea anymore. Definitely not. Bastian pressed the button for the penthouse level. You'll stay with me. We need to maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship, which means being seen together consistently. The penthouse has multiple bedrooms. Your privacy will be respected. Delilah nodded, relief mixing with exhaustion. Thank you for all of this. I know you didn't have to help me. No, I didn't, Bastian agreed. His crimson eyes studied her face. Why do you think I did? Delilah considered the question. Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe because you were bored and it seemed entertaining. Maybe because you genuinely do understand what it's like to be trapped. Or maybe you just really dislike men like Gerald Morrison. All three, actually, Bastian said, surprising her with his honesty. But also because you asked. Directly, bravely, even knowing I could have you killed for the presumption. Very few humans would dare approach me at all, let alone with such a request. I found it refreshing. The elevator doors opened to a stunning penthouse suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furnishings were a mix of modern luxury and old-world elegance. Bastian's two guards peeled off toward their own rooms while he guided Delilah deeper into the suite. Guest room is through there, he indicated. You'll find clothes and necessities already provided. My staff is very efficient. I don't know how to thank you, Delilah said quietly. Bastian turned to face her fully. Then don't. Not yet. We're just beginning, Miss Everhart. The performance tonight was relatively easy, all things considered. Maintaining this fiction will be more complicated. Your family will push back. Others will ask questions. And eventually, we'll need to orchestrate a believable ending to this arrangement. Right. Delilah wrapped her arms around herself. Of course. How long do you think we'll need to keep this up? A few weeks, perhaps. Long enough to ensure your family accepts the situation, and this Gerald Morrison moves on to another target. Bastian's expression darkened. though I may have some investigations done into his business practices. Men who speak of women as purchases rarely limit their cruelty to one area of their lives. Delilah felt a surge of warmth toward this strange, dangerous vampire king. You're not what I expected. No? He almost smiled. What did you expect? Someone colder, I think, more inhuman. You're still terrifying, she added quickly, but you also seem to actually care about things, about right and wrong. I'm 374 years old, Miss Everhart. I've had a very long time to develop opinions about justice and morality. He moved toward the windows, gazing out at the city lights. And I've seen what happens when the powerful abuse those who have no way to fight back. It's tiresome and cruel, and I have no patience for it anymore. Delilah joined him at the windows, maintaining a respectful distance. Can I ask you something personal? You may ask, I may not answer. Have you ever been married? Really married, I mean. Bastian was quiet for a long moment. Once. A very long time ago, before I was king. She was human, like you. The past tense told Delilah everything. I'm sorry. It was centuries ago. The grief has dulled, though it never entirely leaves. He glanced at her. You should rest. Tomorrow will bring new complications, I'm sure. Your family will want explanations. The vampire court will want details. We'll need to coordinate our story. Delilah nodded and headed for the guest room, then paused at the doorway. Bastian, thank you. Truly, you saved my life tonight. Get some sleep, little human, he said softly. We'll see what tomorrow brings. In the morning, the complications arrived exactly as predicted. Delilah woke to find a breakfast spread laid out in the suite's dining area and Bastian already awake, reading something on a tablet while drinking what she very much hoped was tomato juice. Your brother has requested a meeting, he said without preamble. I suggest we get it over with early. Let him see that you're unharmed and that this arrangement is non-negotiable. Marcus arrived an hour later, looking like he hadn't slept. He studied the penthouse with obvious discomfort, his gaze lingering on Delilah in yesterday's dress. Are you all right? He asked her first, which surprised her. I'm fine, Delilah assured him. Better than fine, actually. Mother is having hysterics. Father is locked in his study, and Gerald Morrison has threatened legal action, though his lawyers apparently talked him out of it when they learned who he'd be suing. Marcus turned to Bastian. What exactly are your intentions toward my sister? My intentions are to ensure she's not forced into a marriage against her will. Bastian replied calmly. Beyond that, her future is her own to determine. And when you get bored of this game, Marcus demanded, what happens to her then? She's ruined now for any normal marriage prospects. The daughter who married and divorced the vampire king, or the one he abandoned. Either way, the scandal will follow her forever. Bastian's eyes narrowed. I don't abandon those under my protection. But you'll end this eventually, Marcus pressed. She said it herself last night. This is an arrangement, not a real relationship. So what happens when it ends? Delilah stepped forward. That's my problem to worry about, Marcus, not yours, and honestly, scandal is better than a lifetime with Gerald Morrison. I'll take my chances. Marcus looked between them, frustration evident. This is insane, Delilah. You know that, right? You made a deal with the vampire. With the vampire. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? I asked for his help. Delilah said firmly. He didn't coerce me. He didn't threaten me. He simply agreed to a mutually beneficial arrangement. That's not dangerous. That's business. Everything about vampires is dangerous, Marcus muttered, but he seemed to accept he wasn't going to change her mind. Fine. Do what you want. But don't say I didn't warn you. He left without another word. The next few days fell into a strange routine. Bastian included Delilah in his summit activities, taking her to diplomatic meetings and social events. She met representatives from various vampire houses, each more elegant and intimidating than the last. She learned that vampire society was complex and heavily political, with ancient feuds and alliances that shaped everything they did. She also learned that Bastian was respected and feared in equal measure. Other vampires deferred to him immediately, and even the most arrogant house lords watched their words carefully in his presence. But she also saw moments of genuine care, like when he mediated a dispute between two lesser vampires with patience and wisdom, or when he arranged for a human servant who had been mistreated to find new, safer employment. You actually care about the people you rule. Delilah observed one evening as they returned to the penthouse. Of course I do, Bastian said, sounding almost offended. What good is power if you use it only for cruelty? That's just waste. They were growing comfortable with each other. Delilah realized. The constant physical proximity required by their ruse had made them familiar with each other's presence. She no longer jumped when he touched her hand or placed his palm at her back. Instead, she found herself noticing other things. The way his eyes softened when he was amused, the rare, genuine smiles that transformed his face, the careful way he moved around her, always giving her space to retreat if she needed it. She was starting to like him. Actually like him, not just feel grateful to him. That should probably worry her more than it did. On the fourth night, everything changed. They were returning from a late summit dinner when Bastian suddenly tensed in the elevator, his head tilting slightly. Someone's in the suite, he said quietly. His two guards immediately flanked them, hands moving to weapons Delilah hadn't realized they carried. Who? Delilah whispered. Unknown, stay behind me. They exited the elevator carefully. The penthouse door was still closed and locked, but Bastian opened it with obvious caution. Inside, a figure stood by the window, silhouetted against the city lights. Another vampire, Delilah realized immediately. The pale skin and white hair were unmistakable, but this one felt different somehow, his presence charged with hostility. Theron, Bastian said, his voice gone cold. This is unexpected. The other vampire turned. He was handsome in a sharp, cruel way, with white hair cut shorter than Bastian's and eyes of pale silver. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Is it? You create a diplomatic incident by claiming a human bride, and you don't expect the council to send someone to investigate? Theron's gaze slid to Delilah, and she felt the weight of his contempt. So this is the little human who's caused such trouble. Delilah is none of your concern, Bastian said flatly. Everything you do is my concern, Bastian. We've had the treaty with the human governments for a century. That treaty requires we don't interfere in human affairs, particularly their marriage customs. By claiming this girl, you may have violated that treaty. I claim nothing. Delilah came to me of her own free will. I simply honored an existing bond. Theron laughed, the sound ugly. Please. We both know that's fiction. The question is why you're bothering with this charade at all. What's your angle? I need no angle beyond protecting someone who asked for my help. How noble. Theron moved closer, studying Delilah like she was an insect. Tell me, little human, do you know what you've done? The complications you've caused? Delilah refused to be intimidated. I asked for help escaping a forced marriage. If that violates some treaty, then maybe the treaty is the problem. Theron's eyes widened slightly, then he laughed again. Oh, she's bold, I'll give her that. Stupid, but bold. He turned back to Bastian. The council wants this ended. Quietly, quickly, before the human governments start asking questions about vampire interference. The council can want whatever they wish, Bastian replied. I'm king, not them. Yes, but even a king must answer to his people eventually. Theron's smile turned sharp. End this farce, Bastian. Send the girl home, or there will be consequences. Is that a threat? Consider it friendly advice from an old ally. Theron headed for the door, pausing to look back at Delilah. You should run while you can, little human. Nothing good comes from entangling yourself with our kind, especially not him. Then he was gone, moving with vampire speed. Delilah realized she'd been holding her breath. She released it shakily. Who was that? Theron Nightshade. He sits on the Vampire Council, the group of elder vampires who advise and occasionally attempt to influence my rule. Bastian's expression was grim. I should have anticipated this. The council is conservative and fears anything that might disrupt our arrangement with humanity. Will you end it? Delilah asked quietly. The arrangement, I mean, if it's causing political problems? No. Bastian's answer was immediate and firm. I don't bow to pressure from the council, and I certainly don't abandon my word once given. He moved to pour himself a drink from the bar, something dark red that Delilah tried not to think about too closely. But this does complicate things. If the council believes you're a genuine threat to vampire-human relations, they may take action themselves. What kind of action? Bastian met her eyes. They might try to remove you from the equation. Permanently. Fear shot through Delilah's chest. You mean kill me. I mean try. They wouldn't succeed. His voice carried absolute certainty. But the attempt would force a confrontation I've been avoiding. The council has grown too comfortable questioning my authority. Perhaps it's time to remind them who rules. I don't want to start a war, Delilah said. You didn't start anything. They did, the moment they decided to threaten someone under my protection. Bastian set down his glass. But you should understand what you're in the middle of now. This isn't just about escaping an unwanted marriage anymore. It's become a political test of my authority. Delilah sank onto the sofa, processing this. So what do? We continue as planned. We maintain the fiction of our bond, and we wait to see what move the council makes next. Bastian sat across from her. I can still extract you from this if you wish. Create a believable reason for our separation. Send you somewhere safe. You need to leave your old life behind, start fresh somewhere your family can't find you, but it could be done. The offer was genuine. Delilah could hear it in his voice. He was giving her an out. She thought about it seriously. Thought about running, hiding, starting over in some new city where no one knew her name. It would be lonely and difficult, but safe. Except she didn't want safe. Not if it meant Bastian's authority was undermined. Not if it meant the council learned they could threaten him through others. I'm staying, she said firmly. We finish what we started. Something flickered in Bastian's crimson eyes, something warm and pleased. You're certain? I asked you for help. You gave it even knowing it might cause you problems. I'm not going to run now just because those problems showed up. Delilah met his gaze steadily. Besides, I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being scared. If the council wants to come after me, let them try. You said you'd protect me, and I believe you. Bastian studied her for a long moment. You continue to surprise me, little human. Delilah, she corrected gently. You can use my name. Delilah, he repeated, and something about the way he said it, soft and deliberate, made her heart skip. Very well. Then we proceed. But I want you with me at all times while we're at the summit. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't accept invitations from other vampires. And if anyone approaches you with questions or threats, you come to me immediately. Understood? Understood. The next day, Bastian doubled her security. His 2 original guards were joined by 2 more, creating a constant protective detail. Delilah felt both safe and slightly suffocated, but she understood the necessity. Several times throughout the day, she caught other vampires watching her with calculating expressions, and she wondered if they were part of the council's faction. The summit was scheduled to end in 2 days. Delilah hoped they could make it that long without another incident. She should have known better. The attack came on the second to last evening of the summit. Delilah had stepped into the bathroom during a diplomatic reception with 2 guards stationed outside the door. She was washing her hands when the lights went out. Delilah froze, her heart immediately racing. Hello? A sound came from behind her, movement too fast to track. She spun and found herself face to face with a vampire she didn't recognize. Male, pale, with eyes that gleamed in the darkness. Nothing personal, human, he said, but you're causing problems that need to be solved. He reached for her. Delilah did the only thing she could think of and screamed. The door exploded inward. Bastian moved like liquid violence, crossing the bathroom in less than a heartbeat. He caught the attacking vampire by the throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack the tile. You dare! Bastian snarled, his voice gone utterly inhuman. Attack under my protection? The other vampire choked, clawing at Bastian's grip. The council, they said. I don't care what the council said. Bastian's eyes blazed with fury. You touched what is mine. The penalty for that is death. Bastian! Delilah found her voice shaking but determined. Don't kill him. Not here, not like this. It'll just give the council ammunition. Bastian's head turned toward her, his expression still feral. For a moment, she wasn't sure he'd heard her. Then, slowly, some of the rage faded from his face. You're merciful, he said, more than he deserves. I'm practical, Delilah corrected. If you kill him, it becomes an execution. If you spare him, it becomes a warning. Bastian considered, then smiled coldly. Wise counsel. He looked back at the attacking vampire. You will return to the council. You will tell them that Delilah Everhart is under my personal protection, and any further attempts on her life will be considered a declaration of war against my rule. You will tell them I am not the king they remember, patient with their games. I am done with patience. Am I understood?" The vampire nodded frantically. Bastian released him, and the attacker fled with vampire speed. Bastian immediately turned to Delilah, his hands hovering near her face but not quite touching. "Are you hurt?" His voice had returned to normal, but she could hear the underlying tension. "I am fine. He didn't touch me. You got here in time." "I should have been faster. I should have anticipated they'd try something this direct." Bastian's jaw clenched. "This ends now. We're leaving the summit tonight. But it's not over yet. It is for us." His tone left no room for argument. "The summit has become too dangerous. We'll return to my primary residence where security is absolute." Within an hour, they were in a private car heading out of the city. Bastian's guards drove while he sat with Delilah in the back, his posture tense and alert. She could see him scanning every passing vehicle, every shadow, looking for threats. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "My estate. It's outside the city, built on land my kind has held for centuries. No one enters without my permission." He finally looked at her fully. "You'll be safe there. And the council? They've declared their intentions. Now I'll declare mine." His expression was grim. "There will be a reckoning soon." The estate, when they arrived near dawn, was breathtaking. A massive stone mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from some European country, surrounded by acres of forested land and enclosed by walls that Delilah suspected were more defensible than they appeared. Inside, the decor was rich and old-fashioned, all dark woods and velvet furnishings with modern amenities seamlessly integrated. "Your room," Bastian said, showing her to a suite that was easily 3 times the size of her apartment back home. "Rest. We'll talk more after sunset." Delilah wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't tired, but exhaustion hit her like a wave. The adrenaline from the attack was wearing off, leaving her shaky and drained. She nodded and watched Bastian leave, closing the door quietly behind him. She managed to shower and change into the clothes she found waiting in the wardrobe, all in her size, before collapsing into the massive bed. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was that she felt safer here, in a vampire's mansion, than she ever had in her family's home. When she woke, evening light was filtering through the curtains. Delilah found fresh clothes laid out, along with a note in elegant handwriting. "Join me for dinner when you're ready. First floor, east wing." She followed the instructions and found a dining room set for 2. Bastian was already there, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt that made his pale skin seem to glow. He stood when she entered. "You look rested," he observed. "I feel better." Delilah took the seat he held for her. "Has anything happened since we arrived?" "I've sent messages to the council, made my position clear." He poured her wine with practiced ease. "And I've begun making arrangements for your long-term safety." "Long-term? Our arrangement was always meant to be temporary," Bastian said carefully. "But circumstances have changed. The council now sees you as a symbol of my defiance. Even if we staged a separation, they might still view you as a potential target, a way to hurt or manipulate me." Delilah set down her fork. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you can't go back to your old life. Not safely. Your family, your home, everything you knew before, it's all compromised now." He met her eyes. "I'm sorry. This isn't what you signed up for." "No, it's not," Delilah agreed. She took a shaky breath. "But I knew the risks. Maybe not all of them, but I knew I was gambling with my future when I approached you. And honestly, my old life wasn't that great to begin with. A family that wanted to sell me off, no real career prospects, trapped in a city I never liked. This is terrifying, but it's also the first time in years I felt like I was actually living instead of just surviving." Bastian looked surprised. "You're taking this remarkably well." "I'm terrified," Delilah admitted, "but I'm also not alone, which is more than I had before. You've protected me, kept your word, treated me with more respect than my own family did. That means something." They ate in companionable silence for a while. Then Bastian spoke again. "I want to offer you a permanent place here," he said. "Not as a pretend bride or a temporary arrangement, as someone under my genuine protection, part of my household. You'd have your own quarters, your own resources, freedom to pursue whatever interests you wish. In exchange, you'd occasionally need to appear at my side for political functions, maintaining the appearance that we're still bound, but otherwise, your life would be your own." Delilah considered the offer. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've proven yourself worthy of trust, and because I find I enjoy your company." He said it simply, without artifice. "You're clever, brave, and refreshingly honest. Those are rare qualities, especially among those who typically surround me. I'd be pleased to count you as an ally and friend, if nothing else." "Friend?" Delilah repeated softly. The word felt significant somehow. "I'd like that. Being your friend." Something in Bastian's expression softened. Then it settled. "Welcome to your new home, Delilah Everhart." The following weeks fell into a surprisingly comfortable routine. Delilah explored the vast estate, discovering libraries full of rare books, gardens that bloomed despite the late season, and rooms filled with art and artifacts from centuries past. Bastian gave her free rein of everything, seeming genuinely pleased when she showed interest in his collections. They spent their evenings together, sometimes discussing politics and vampire society, other times simply talking about everything and nothing. Delilah learned about Bastian's long life, the centuries he'd witnessed, the changes he'd seen. He learned about her childhood, her dreams of becoming a writer, her complicated feelings about her family. "Do you miss them?" he asked one night as they sat in his study, fire crackling in the hearth. "Sometimes," Delilah admitted. "I miss what they could have been, the family I wished I had. But the real people? The ones who saw me as currency? Not really." "You deserve better than that," Bastian said quietly. "So did you. Your wife, the one who died. That must have been terrible." "It was centuries ago," Bastian said, but his eyes were distant. "Her name was Elena. She was gentle and kind, everything I wasn't. She saw something worth loving in a monster, and I treasured her for it. When she died, I thought I'd never want anything again. But time changes everything, even grief. Do you think you could love again?" Delilah asked, then immediately felt her face heat. "Sorry, that's too personal." "No, it's all right." Bastian looked at her thoughtfully. "I didn't think so for a very long time, but recently I've begun to wonder." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something charged and complicated. Delilah felt her breath catch. Before either could speak, one of the guards entered. "Sire, we have visitors. The council has sent a delegation. They're requesting an audience." Bastian's expression went cold. "Let them wait in the formal receiving room. I'll be there shortly." He looked at Delilah. "Stay here. This could get ugly." "No." Delilah stood. "If they're here about me, I should be there." "Delilah, you said I was under your protection. That makes me part of this, whether you like it or not. Let me stand with you." Bastian studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Very well. But you stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Agreed?" "Agreed." They descended to the formal receiving room together. 3 vampires waited there, all ancient-looking despite their youthful faces, all radiating power. Theron Nightshade was among them, his expression smug. "Bastian," the eldest vampire said. He had white hair braided down his back and eyes like chips of ice. "Thank you for seeing us. We come to discuss this unfortunate situation with the human girl." "Delilah," Bastian corrected coldly. "Her name is Delilah, and she's under my protection. What is there to discuss?" "The council has voted," Theron said. "This arrangement must end. For the good of all vampire kind, your attachment to this human must be severed. We cannot risk the treaty with humanity over one girl." "Then it's fortunate the council doesn't give me orders," Bastian replied. The eldest vampire sighed. "Don't be difficult, Bastian. We're trying to avoid a crisis. Surely you can see that this girl isn't worth risking everything we've built." "Can't I?" Bastian's voice went dangerously soft. "Tell me, Casimir, when did the council decide it could dictate who I protect? When did you grow so arrogant as to believe your votes outweigh my authority?" "We're not trying to undermine you," the third vampire, a female with silver eyes, said quickly. "We simply believe you're letting personal feelings cloud your judgment. This girl is a distraction, a weakness others can exploit." "She's neither," Bastian said. "She's a person who asked for my help, and I gave it. That's not weakness, it's honor. Something the council seems to have forgotten." "Honor?" Theron laughed. "You speak of honor while flaunting this human in front of everyone, while risking diplomatic incidents and violating treaties. Where's the honor in that?" Delilah felt anger surge through her. She stepped forward before she could think better of it. "The honor is in keeping his word," she said loudly. "The honor is in protecting someone weaker instead of abandoning them. The honor is in doing what's right instead of what's convenient. Maybe if you spent less time worrying about politics and more time actually caring about the people your laws affect, you'd understand that. The 3 council members stared at her in shock. Even Bastian looked surprised. Then Casimir laughed, though it didn't sound amused. The human lectures us on honor. How delightful. Tell me, girl, do you have any idea what you're interfering with, the delicate balance we maintain? I know you tried to have me killed, Delilah shot back. That seems pretty unbalanced to me. That was unauthorized, the female vampire said quickly. The vampire responsible acted without council approval. But you didn't exactly rush to condemn him either, Bastian observed. In fact, I noticed no one here has apologized for the attempt on Delilah's life. Curious that. Silence fell, tense and brittle. Finally, Casimir spoke. Very well. If you insist on keeping the girl, we cannot stop you. You are king after all. But understand this, Bastian. The council's patience has limits. Continue down this path, and you may find yourself without our support when you need it most. Is that a threat? It's a warning. From allies who remember when you were more reasonable. Casimir turned to leave, the other 2 following. At the door, he paused. You can't protect her forever, Bastian. Humans are fragile. They age and die so quickly. This will end badly one way or another. Then they were gone. Delilah felt her hand shaking with residual adrenaline. Bastian turned to her, and she expected anger at her outburst. Instead, he was almost smiling. That was incredibly reckless, he said. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was also incredibly brave, and satisfying to watch, I'll admit. He reached out and gently took her hand. You stood up to the Vampire Council. Very few humans could do that. I was terrified, Delilah admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, the touch gentle. Thank you for standing with me. Always, Delilah said, and meant it. Something shifted between them in that moment. The pretense, the arrangement, all of it fell away, leaving something real and true. Bastian seemed to feel it too, because his expression changed, softened, became almost vulnerable. Delilah, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. These past weeks with you have been significant. You've reminded me what it's like to care about someone, to want to protect them not out of duty, but because they matter. You matter. To me. Delilah's heart was racing now for entirely different reasons. You matter to me too. I'm vampire, Bastian continued. I'm dangerous, ancient, and political. Being with me means constant threats, constant complications. You deserve better than that. You deserve a normal life with a normal man who can give you sunlit days and simple pleasures. I don't want normal, Delilah said firmly. I want real. And this, us, whatever we're becoming, feels more real than anything else in my life ever has. Even knowing what it means. The danger, the politics, the fact that I'll outlive you by centuries. Even knowing all of that, Delilah stepped closer. I'm not saying I have everything figured out. I don't. This is all new and terrifying, but I know I don't want to walk away, not from you. Bastian's hand came up to cup her face, cool and gentle. You're certain? I'm certain. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious. Delilah melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, and she felt centuries of loneliness and longing in the way he held her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bastian rested his forehead against hers. I've been alone for so long, he whispered. I'd forgotten what this felt like. You're not alone anymore, Delilah promised. Neither of us are. They spent the rest of the evening talking, making plans, discussing what a real relationship between them would look like. Bastian was honest about the challenges, about vampire politics and the council's likely reactions. Delilah was honest about her fears, about what she'd be giving up from her human life. I'll need to tell my family something, she said. They still think this is all pretend. Tell them the truth, Bastian suggested, that it started as an arrangement but became real. They'll either accept it or they won't, but at least you'll have been honest. Delilah nodded, though the thought of that conversation made her anxious. What about the council? They're not going to just accept this. No, they won't, but I'm done placating them. I'm king. It's time I reminded everyone what that means. His expression turned determined. There will be changes. I've been too permissive, too willing to let the council have their way for the sake of peace. But peace without justice is just another form of oppression. Over the following days, Bastian began restructuring vampire society. He reached out to the lesser houses, the ones who had little voice in council decisions, and began including them in governance. He reformed old laws that no longer made sense in the modern world. He opened channels for vampires who felt mistreated by the council to appeal directly to him. The council, predictably, was furious, but they were also divided. Some of the elder vampires supported the changes, seeing them as overdue. Others resisted, clinging to old power structures. Delilah supported Bastian through all of it, offering perspective from a human viewpoint, helping him understand how his laws would affect those without vampire power. She also began reaching out to human organizations, building bridges between the two societies in ways that had never been tried before. She called Marcus one afternoon, bracing for a difficult conversation. "Delilah?" Her brother sounded surprised to hear from her. "Are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm fine. I'm at Bastian's estate, and I'm calling to tell you that things have changed. The arrangement we started with, it's become real. I'm choosing to stay with him, properly." Silence on the line. Then, "Are you sure about this?" "Yes. I know it's complicated and probably scandalous, but I've never been more certain about anything." Marcus sighed. "I won't pretend I understand it, but you sound happy, Delilah. Happier than you've been in years. So, if this is what you want, then I support you." The words made Delilah's eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know. Just promise me you'll be careful, and stay in touch, all right? You're still my sister." "I promise." After she hung up, Bastian found her wiping her eyes and pulled her into an embrace. "Good news?" "Better than I expected." Delilah leaned into him. "My brother gave us his blessing." "Then he's wiser than most." Bastian kissed the top of her head. "Come, I have something to show you." He led her to a section of the estate she hadn't explored yet, unlocking a door that opened onto a beautiful conservatory. Inside, despite the cooling weather, flowers bloomed in impossible profusion. This was Elena's favorite place. Bastian said quietly, "I've kept it maintained all these centuries, a memorial of sorts, but I think it's time to let it be something new." He turned to Delilah. "I want you to have it. For whatever you wish. A writing studio, a garden, anything." Delilah looked around the beautiful space, understanding the significance of the gift. This was Bastian truly letting go of the past, making room for their future. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm sure. Elena would have liked you, I think. She would have wanted me to be happy again. And you make me happy, Delilah. Genuinely, deeply happy." "You make me happy too," Delilah said, then laughed. "Is that too simple? Too easy?" "Sometimes the best things are simple." He pulled her close. "I love you, Delilah Everhart. I didn't expect to, didn't plan for it, but I do." "I love you too," Delilah whispered. "My vampire king." "Just Bastian," he corrected gently. "When it's us, I'm just Bastian." They kissed, surrounded by flowers, sunlight filtering through glass above them. It should have been impossible. Vampire and human, king and ordinary girl. But somehow it worked. The council made one final attempt to intervene, calling a formal gathering of all vampire houses to vote on Bastian's fitness to rule. It was a bold move, essentially a challenge to his authority. Bastian accepted the challenge calmly. The gathering took place in an ancient underground hall, carved from stone centuries before. Hundreds of vampires attended, representing every house and faction. Delilah stood at Bastian's side, acutely aware of all the eyes on her. Casimir presented the council's case. Bastian Sangrave has allowed personal attachments to compromise his judgment. He's endangered our treaty with humanity, reformed laws without proper consensus, and undermined the council's authority. We move that his kingship be reconsidered. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Bastian waited until silence fell again before speaking. "I don't dispute the charges," he said clearly. "I have put personal loyalty above political convenience. I have changed laws I deemed unjust, and I have repeatedly overruled a council that forgot its place. The question before you is not whether I did these things, but whether doing them makes me unfit to rule." He looked around the hall, meeting eyes without flinching. "For 300 years, I've maintained order among our kind. I've negotiated peace with humanity. I've protected the weak and punished the cruel. And yes, I've occasionally made decisions the council disliked. That's what kings do. We lead, even when leadership is unpopular." But you can't make decisions based on love for a human, Theron argued. That's a weakness we cannot afford. Is it? Bastian's hand found Delilah's. Love makes me weak? I'd argue the opposite. Love gives me perspective the council lacks. It reminds me why we have laws in the first place, what we're trying to protect. Delilah came to me desperate and afraid, and I helped her. That's not weakness. That's the entire point of power, to use it for those who have none. He turned back to the assembled vampires. So yes, I love a human, and I will continue to love her, protect her, and value her counsel. If that makes me unfit to rule in your eyes, then vote me out. But understand that whoever takes my place will face the same impossible choices, the same tension between doing what's right and doing what's expedient. I've chosen right. I'll always choose right. If you want a different answer, you need a different king. Silence fell, heavy and expectant. Then, from the back of the hall, a voice spoke up. I vote to keep Bastian as king. It was a vampire from one of the lesser houses, one who had no real power, but apparently enough courage to speak anyway. And I, another said. And I. The voices multiplied, spreading through the hall like wildfire. Not everyone supported Bastian, but enough did. More than enough. When the formal vote was called, it was overwhelming. Bastian remained king. Casimir looked furious, but he bowed stiffly. The houses have spoken. So be it. Bastian inclined his head. I thank you for your confidence, and I promise I will continue to earn it. As they left the hall, Delilah squeezed his hand. You did it. We did it, Bastian corrected. You stood with me. That made all the difference. Life settled into a new normal after that. The council learned to work with Bastian's reforms rather than against them. Delilah became an unofficial ambassador between the vampire and human worlds, writing articles and giving talks about vampire society to interested humans. Her family slowly came around, with even her mother eventually accepting that Delilah had found something genuine. Bastian began discussing the possibility of transforming Delilah into a vampire eventually, giving her the choice of immortality when she was ready. They had time to decide, years of it, but the offer stood. On their 1-year anniversary of the night Delilah had first approached Bastian at the summit, he took her back to the hotel ballroom where it had all begun. He had rented the entire space for the evening, and it stood empty except for them. Do you remember what you said to me that night? Bastian asked as they stood in the center of the floor. I said I needed you to pretend to be my husband, Delilah recalled. I was so scared. I had no idea what I was doing. You were magnificent, terrified, and desperate, and absolutely magnificent. He pulled a small box from his pocket. I'm not asking you to pretend anymore, Delilah. I'm asking you to make it real. Marry me. Actually marry me. Be my partner in truth, not just in fiction. Delilah's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a ring with a deep red stone that seemed to glow with inner fire. Yes, she breathed. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her deeply. When they parted, both were smiling. Mrs. Sangrave, Bastian said, testing the name. I like it, Delilah said. I like it a lot. They married a month later in the conservatory, surrounded by flowers and a small group of friends from both the vampire and human worlds. Marcus walked Delilah down the aisle, and even her mother attended, looking uncomfortable but present. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, blending vampire traditions with human ones. When Bastian kissed his bride, sealing their vows, Delilah felt like her life had finally begun. Everything before had been prologue, preparation for this moment, this man, this impossible love. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you, Bastian replied, my queen, my partner, my heart. Years passed, happy and full. Delilah published a book about vampire society that became a bestseller. Bastian continued his reforms, creating a more just and equitable vampire world. They traveled, they laughed, they built a life together that honored both their worlds. When Delilah turned 35, she told Bastian she was ready to transform, to join him in immortality, to spend centuries together instead of mere decades. He agreed, and the transformation was performed with all the ancient rituals and safeguards. Delilah woke 3 days later with pale skin, white hair, and crimson eyes that matched Bastian's. She was vampire now, powerful and immortal, but she was still herself, Still the girl who had begged a stranger to save her and found herself saved in ways she'd never imagined. "How do you feel?" Bastian asked, holding her hand as she took her first steps in her new form. "Strong," Delilah said wonderingly. "Alive, more myself than ever." "Good." He kissed her forehead. "Because we have centuries ahead of us, my love. Centuries to explore, to learn, to love." "I can't wait," Delilah said honestly, and she meant it. The girl who had once felt trapped and helpless now had eternity spread before her with the man she loved at her side. She had escaped her family's plans and found something infinitely better. She had begged a stranger to play her groom, and he had become her everything. The vampire world would remember Delilah Everhart Sangrave as the human who changed everything, who reminded them all what honor and love meant. But Delilah herself remembered only the beginning, the moment of desperate courage that had changed 2 lives forever. She had saved herself with a little help from the Vampire King, and in doing so, she'd saved him too, reminding him how to love again, how to live instead of merely existing. Together, they rewrote the rules. Together, they built a future where love mattered more than politics, where courage was rewarded, where happy endings were possible even in the darkest of worlds. And they lived, truly lived, happily ever after. The end.